At Spectrum, we believe you shouldn't have to choose between speed, reliability, and value. That's why Spectrum fiber-powered internet gives you all three for just $40 a month. Click now.
Hello folks, I have got massive news regarding Beast of Reincarnation today, as despite having dropped 2 brand new gameplay videos in the past week or so already, I somehow have yet another brand new piece of gameplay to show you all today. Alongside this, we have many new details confirmed for the game itself, however the biggest of the lot in my opinion would be the confirmation of this game's combat being built almost entirely around parrying. Previously, we knew there was a massive focus on parrying, however, up until now, it's been a little bit unknown as to just how necessary it will all be. And so, I want to dive into that first because I think it's really important that everyone understands just exactly what kind of game Beast of Reincarnation is panning out to be. I'll let the new gameplay footage play in the background and we'll circle back to talking about it in a little while, but to start off with parrying, we basically have 100% confirmation that this game's combat falls more in line with the likes of Sekiro, Lies of P or Wolong, more than it does with any other Souls-like or action RPGs. Despite the game having block and dodge mechanics, which will still have their uses, almost everything regarding combat is rooted in successfully parrying, and by extension, being extremely aggressive. For instance, to build up Emma's and Ku's gauges, you will need to parry attacks. Holding block whilst receiving hits will actually decrease Emma's gauge, and if depleted entirely, she'll temporarily be open to massive damage. And so, the only way to keep this up is to successfully parry attacks. By filling up these gauges, you open up Emma's combat options through either using this energy to perform abilities, or slow down time using her overdrive, which can be used to unleash a barrage of attacks, or escape, reposition, etc. However, Ku is very unique in that seemingly only he can cast direct elemental damage through his abilities, and he's also responsible for a lot of the overall crowd control, meaning both of these gameplay elements are basically locked behind successfully parrying. And then, to add to this, whenever Ku uses an ability, this QuickTime event occurs, and if done successfully, then Emma actually heals a small portion of her health too. Perfect dodges can be done, however, only when enemies perform these red highlighted attacks, and it's yet to be seen if dodging normally has any iframes or not. So what we have here is resource management, ability usage, elemental damage, crowd control, and passive healing, all locked behind the parry mechanic, as well as many factors as to why remaining aggressive in combat is very much encouraged. Now, before diving any deeper, the saving grace for anyone put off by the possible challenge parrying presents is that this game has multiple difficulty settings, and that all folks who have had hands-on with the game already have remarked on its very forgiving timing. Of course, you won't know for yourself until you play, but at least it's not just one base difficulty setting, and everyone will have the option to make things easier or harder, depending on how they're finding the experience. Further highlights for parrying would be different weapons have unique passives attached that typically all center around once again successfully parrying, so parry and attack and this effect will occur. And then we also have soul stones that do a great many different things, however it's almost a guarantee that some of these will affect and enhance parrying too. Outside of this, it's entirely possible that a combination of sword, armor, soul stones, and skill tree could result in a playstyle that doesn't rely on parrying as much. None of this is confirmed, but it is possible that, say, a sword directly impacts dodging or blocking instead, or there are soul stones that center around regaining energy through dodges, or things to that effect, etc. Meaning it may be possible to create 1 or 2 builds that don't focus on parrying as much, or at all. But again, this is speculation and we'll just have to wait and see. The main takeaway for all of this though would absolutely be that Beast of Reincarnation has been built almost entirely around its parry-based systems and mechanics, and so parrying is 100% expected of you throughout the entire experience. Albeit there are difficulty settings and many other combat options too, but parrying is still the core focus. Now, of course, alongside all of this, we do have a bunch of new details revealed in this new gameplay footage, and so in no particular order, we'll be going through all of those right now. What we already pretty much had confirmed before is that the only instance of pausing time within the game is when accessing Ku's abilities. The game has mistakenly been labelled as an action RPG / turn-based game. However, beyond Ku's list of abilities, all other combat mechanics are in real time. We've no idea if this can be changed within the settings, but again, as far as things currently stand, Ku's abilities are the only thing that act almost like a turn-based system. Some of Ku's abilities do indeed have crowd control, but as mentioned, he also has access to elemental damage, being burn, corrosion, poison, and shock. Alongside this, his other abilities can also do things like shred enemy armor, make them slow, etc. The main points here being that the wealth of utility and options coming from Ku cannot be ignored, and the game has intentionally been designed in this way, in that Emma has very little alternative to things like elemental damage, and so if we want to be as effective in combat as possible, then we will absolutely need to be using Ku. Now, in this footage, we got our first ever glimpse at Ku's skill tree. It looks almost identical to Emma's in terms of structure, but we've absolutely no idea what options will be available on here. In addition to this, we still haven't seen Ku's inventory screen. The player clicks on it in this video, but then the video cuts to Emma's inventory instead, giving the impression that Ku's inventory screen is deliberately being kept under wraps for now. We know that Emma and Ku both equip stuff in their inventory and level up their skill trees, completely respective of one another, but there will be a ton of synergy between the two, allowing them both to play off each other during combat. As of now, we have it confirmed that Emma can find, upgrade, and change her sword. Different swords come with different passives, as mentioned before, with the different effects that happen whenever we parry. However, we also have two ranged weapons, being the bow and hand crossbow. The bow is more long range, hitting harder, and gives freedom for aiming, whereas the crossbow has auto lock-on, along with rapid fire, and is typically more close range, likely being better at doing things like applying elemental damage, given its rapid attack rate. And ranged ammo can also be found, upgraded, and changed between. Next, we have armor, and up until a video or two ago, I really didn't think the gambeson could be changed, but instead it would just be upgraded to unlock more of these soulstone slots. However, in this footage, we see it has various different options. We can again find, upgrade, and change between. We don't know the full ins and outs, but it would appear it's just the one armor slot we have, as in no helmet, gloves, boots, etc. And as far as I can tell, this doesn't appear to change Emma's appearance either. However, I could be completely wrong, so we will just have to wait and see. And then finally below this we have soul stones, and the amount of slots available is dependent on our current armor. Soul stones do a great many different things, like increase the rate of fire for ranged weapons, or increase their range, crit chance, etc. This goes across the board for almost everything. We can tweak things like crit chance, crit damage, healing whilst attacking, parry timing and effectiveness, elemental build-up, energy recovery, etc. This all then goes hand in hand with the previous points of both Emma and Ku synergizing with one another. No doubt, Ku has a fair few options within his inventory too, and so not only is building this pair how you want them part of the fun, but also seeing how they then bounce off one another too is an additional part of it. Now, as a final segment, folks, I just want to touch on Beast of Reincarnation's overall polish and accessibility. As nice as the game looks, a very legitimate question is just how refined is the experience overall, and just how responsive and accurate will combat truly feel. It's no secret that this is Game Freak, and they have the longest history in turn-based combat with Pokemon, and so it wouldn't come as no surprise if they release a less than perfect combat system as basically their first ever attempt. But then, through all of the promotional footage for the game we've seen so far, everyone has had really positive things to say. The general sentiment is that they're a little bit blown away at just how refined and polished the entire experience here is, especially when factoring in that this is the first ever game like this that Game Freak have ever attempted to create. This is set across the board for its freedom in movement, its world and story, and then somewhat more importantly, its overall combat systems, which to a certain degree do make up the core of this game's gameplay. We obviously won't truly know ourselves until we get some less biased reviews and or simply play the game, but simultaneously, we have nothing so far that suggests Beast of Reincarnation has missed the mark, or that its systems are a little half-baked, etc. Another thing I see mentioned an awful lot is the game's accessibility and how it's almost like an entry-level version of Sekiro in some ways. Whilst Sekiro demands the absolute most of you as a player to eventually grasp its systems and begin ploughing through the game, Beast of Reincarnation is far more forgiving and comes across as an experience that doesn't quite expect the same level of skill from you. I think this approach should mostly go over quite well for most players come launch, but of course, we will all absolutely need to see for ourselves. I have requested a review key for Beast of Reincarnation, and I anticipate that if I am going to receive a key, then I'll be hearing back quite soon, as the game is only 4 or so weeks away from launch now. Outside of receiving a key, I will continue to cover the game's developments, and then come launch, you can all expect various guides and additional news videos covering its updates and future ongoings, etc. Which of course is then all basically to say that do feel free to treat this channel as your one-stop spot for all things Beast of Reincarnation moving forward. Anyway, that would be it for this one, folks. I'll be back soon with plenty more, and I do of course have a range of guide and news videos on the channel already, so do feel free to stop on by and check things out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, folks, and until next time, peace.